Emily stepped out of her small apartment building just as the morning sun warmed the quiet street. She hugged her thin coat close, enjoying the gentle light that promised a mild spring day. In her bag, she carried an old notebook filled with lesson plans and a lunchbox she had packed the night before. She kissed the packed peanut butter sandwich and an apple goodbye, imagining how satisfying that first bite would be in her empty classroom. Money had been tight all month. She kept careful track of every cent. And today, she only had enough for a cup of coffee and a small pastry if she splurged. She walked quickly to the bus stop. Weaving between neighbors, heading to work, each step carried a small worry. Rent was due in 2 days and she was short. She reminded herself that the students depended on her. The promise she made to help each one learn and grow fueled her feet as they carried her forward. At the corner deli, she entered. A soft aroma of fresh bread and brewing coffee filled the small space. The counter, lined with colorful pastries and glass cases, sparkled under overhead lights. Behind the counter stood Carla, the friendly clerk who always greeted Emily with a bright smile. Emily nodded and returned the smile. Grateful for the kind face she saw every day, Emily joined the short line behind a tall young man in a crisp suit. He tapped his foot and glanced at his watch. The past week had been his first in this town, and he still found himself running late. He was new to the neighborhood and working at a tech startup downtown. His name was Marcus, but today he would feel anything but confident. As he stepped up to the counter, he picked out a roast beef sandwich and a bottle of cold water. He slipped his card into the reader, expecting the familiar beep. Instead, the machine blinked red. The card was declined. His heart sank. He cleared his throat and offered a small laugh. "I'm so sorry," he said, cheeks coloring. "Have to come back later when I sort my account." Emily watched quietly from a few steps back. She recognized that look of embarrassment. She had worn it many times herself. Her fingers closed around the strap of her bag, and she remembered how it felt when her own card had been denied a few months ago. She had watched friends walk away with their meals, feeling the itch of shame in her throat, too proud to ask for help. When the moment came, Emily stepped forward, her heart beating strongly. "Excuse me," she said softly to Marcus and to Carla behind the counter. "Could you please add his sandwich and water to mine? I'd like to pay for it." Carla's eyes brightened. She rang up Emily's order of coffee and the small pastry. Then she added the roast beef sandwich and water with a gentle nod. "That'll be $6, please," she said to Emily. Emily reached into her coat pocket. She counted the coins carefully, then pulled out a single crumpled dollar bill. That was it, her last dollar. She placed it on the counter and smiled. "This is all I have, but please use it for him." Marcus frowned for a moment, searching her eyes in confusion. Emily felt a warm rush in her chest. She clasped her hands and looked at the lone dollar, then back at Marcus. "It's okay," she said. "We all have moments when we need a little help." The other customers shifted and watched. Some smiled. Some pretended not to notice. Carla accepted the dollar and gave Emily her coffee and pastry. Then she punched in Marcus's sandwich and water as paid. Marcus's shoulders relaxed. He looked at Emily with gratitude and surprise. "Are you sure?" he asked. Emily nodded. She felt a gentle pride in her choice. "I'd like you to have it, and honestly, it's not much. But you seemed like you needed it." Marcus smiled, a real one this time, and extended his hand. "Hi, Marcus." "Emily," she said, shaking his hand. They stood in silence for a moment, holding hands above the counter. The deli felt warmer now, like a small bubble where friendship could grow. Emily thought about how quickly life could change. Yesterday, she had worried about her rent. Today, she was sharing her last dollar with a stranger. Carla handed Marcus his sandwich and water wrapped in white paper. "Enjoy," she said with a wink. "And thank you, Emily." They moved to a small table by the window. Marcus pulled out a chair for Emily, though her coffee was hot and fresh. She sat down, grateful for a moment of rest. He sat across from her, closing his eyes as he inhaled the smell of the sandwich. He took a careful bite and sighed happily. "That's delicious," he said. "You have good taste." Emily took a sip of her coffee, savoring the rich flavor. "I've tried it before," she said. "It's my favorite cheap lunch." They talked quietly, voices low against the hum of the deli. Emily told him she taught second grade at the local elementary school. She loved reading stories to her students and helping them learn new words. Marcus shared that he worked in software, building apps to help local businesses. He had only moved here 2 weeks ago and was still adjusting to the slow pace of the town. Emily asked him about his family, and Marcus spoke of his younger sister, who lived 3 hours away. They laughed as they discovered a shared love of autumn walks and old movies. For a moment, Emily forgot her worries about rent. She felt ease and curiosity bloom in her chest. After a few minutes, Emily checked her watch. She smiled with regret. "I have to get back before class starts," she said. Marcus nodded. He gathered his things and stood. "Thank you again," he said earnestly. Emily stood too and picked up her bag. She looked at his face, the shape of his eyes, the kindness there. "You're welcome," she said softly. They shared a small wave. "Goodbye," and Emily turned toward the door. As she stepped outside, she felt the fresh air rushing against her cheeks. She smiled and took a deep breath. Inside the deli, Marcus watched her go. He thought of her bright eyes and her warm smile. He knew he would look for her again. Emily walked briskly to the school, the book bag bouncing gently against her side. With each step, she replayed the morning in her mind and felt an unexpected hope. She told herself it was silly, but she wondered about the man whose sandwich she had bought. As she reached the school gates, she tucked away that thought and straightened her shoulders. There were eager faces waiting for her in the classroom. When the bell rang, she greeted each child with a smile and a kind word. She handed out the day's lesson sheets and began reading a story about a brave mouse. Her voice was strong and clear, but her mind drifted back to the deli and the man named Marcus. She wondered if his day would go well. In that moment, Emily felt something shift inside her heart. She realized that giving Evan when you think you have nothing left could spark something wonderful. And she did not yet know how wonderful. Marcus woke early the next morning with thoughts of Emily dancing in his mind. He lay in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling, and smiled. Remembered the warm light in her eyes as she handed over that last dollar. Recalled the gentle way she spoke when she said it was okay. He did not know why he felt so alive, but he did. He dressed quickly, choosing a crisp shirt and his best pair of jeans. He looked in the mirror and took a deep breath. Today, he decided, he would return to the deli. He would find Emily again, even if he had to wait all day. Grabbed his bag, locked the door, and hurried downstairs. The deli opened at 8. Marcus arrived 10 minutes early and settled into a small chair by the window. He watched the door, his heart beating fast with each chime of the bell. Customers came and went. Some bought coffee. Some grabbed breakfast sandwiches, but Emily did not appear. He ordered a simple black coffee. The steam curled from the mug like a soft white cloud. Carla, the friendly clerk, handed it to him with a nod. "She'll be here," Carla whispered, as if she understood exactly what Marcus needed. He smiled gratefully and sipped the hot drink. Time moved slowly. He closed his eyes and let the taste of coffee warm him. He wondered what Emily liked, too. Read. He pictured her in a bookstore, running her fingers along the spines of books. He hoped she enjoyed mysteries or stories of faraway places as the morning work rush began. Marcus watched busy customers, but he did not care about them. All he saw was the empty doorway through which Emily had entered the day before. He thought of how brave she had been, using her last dollar to help a stranger. He thought of how small acts could change everything. Back in her classroom, Emily felt a quiet restlessness. She taught her students their spelling words, but her mind wandered. She smiled as she imagined Marcus's surprised face when she paid for his lunch. She watched the children draw shapes and letters. But she thought, instead of the warm aroma of roast beef and fresh bread. At lunchtime, Emily packed her things and left the school. She walked the few blocks to the deli, hoping to see Marcus again. As she neared the door, she heard voices inside. She paused, her hand on the handle, and took a deep breath. Inside, Marcus sat alone at the opposite corner table, head bent over a notebook. He wrote something quickly, tore out the page, and folded. He looked up, and their eyes met. Surprise spread across both faces. Emily stepped inside, closing the door behind her. The midday sun cast bright patches on the wooden floor. Marcus stood, brushing his hair back with a shy hand. He held out a folded piece of paper. "I wrote something," he said, his voice soft. Emily blinked, then smiled. She walked toward him, curiosity shining in her eyes. He handed her the note and sat back down. She unfolded the paper. Inside, in neat handwriting, it read, "Thank you doesn't seem enough. You made my day brighter. I hope our paths cross again." Emily felt her cheeks warm. She folded the paper carefully and looked at Marcus. "That's very sweet," she said. "I'm glad I could help." He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Please join me." Emily hesitated, then sat. They ordered lunch to turkey sandwiches and cold water. This time Anne talked. She told him about how she loved teaching children. She spoke of her dream to start a small reading club on weekends. Marcus listened, nodding, his eyes warm. He told her about his work in technology and how he hoped to create apps that help people connect. They laughed over shared jokes about childhood games. They discovered they both loved old jazz records and often visited a little record store downtown. Emily described a recent find, a rare vinyl of Billie Holiday songs. Marcus's eyes lit up. He offered to go with her to the record store that weekend. After lunch, Emily glanced at her watch. "I should get back to class," she said with regret. Marcus listened and frowned. "But you just arrived." Emily smiled apologetically. "My students need me." He nodded, though he looked disappointed. He stood and gathered the lunch wrappers. "Thank you for lunch," he said softly. "And for being kind." Emily stood too. She met his gaze. "Thank you for the note," she replied. They stepped outside together. Sun shone on each of them, painting their faces with golden light. Emily tucked the note into her bag. They said goodbye and went their separate ways, both feeling lighter than before. Over the next few days, Marcus found reasons to return to the deli. He ordered coffee, even when he did not need it. He chatted with Carla about Emily's arrival. Times Carla teased him gently, telling him that Emily came in most afternoons around 12:30. On the fourth day, Marcus arrived early once more and waited. When Emily stepped through the door, she looked across the room and froze for it. Moment. Marcus waved, and she smiled back, relief shining in her eyes. They met at the counter. Marcus bought his coffee first, then gestured to Emily's order. "Let me get this for you," he offered, surprising both her and Carla. Emily shook her head. "I couldn't ask you to." Marcus smiled. "I saved your day once. Now let me do the same." Carla rang up his coffee and Emily's pastry together, and Marcus paid without hesitation. Emily watched him, her heart warm. They found the same table by the window and shared pastries while they planned their weekend trip to the record store. They talked about their favorite songs and artists, and Marcus promised to bring his own collection to share. Emily agreed to bring tea and homemade cookies. As they talked, small things drew them closer. Marcus brushed a crumb from Emily's coat and laughed when it fell onto his shoe. Emily teased him for being so neat. They discovered they both dreaded public speaking but enjoyed small group chats. They admitted to shy smiles and clumsy jokes when meeting someone new. After an hour, Emily checked her watch again. She rose to go. "I'll see you at the record store on Saturday," she confirmed. Marcus nodded. "I can't wait," they said. Goodbye, and left together, walking side by side down the sidewalk. They talked about the tall trees in the park across the street. Emily mentioned how lovely they looked in spring bloom. Marcus suggested they take a walk through the park before their record store date. Emily agreed, and they laughed at their sudden string of plans. When they reached the street corner, they paused. Emily faced Marcus. "Thank you," she said. Again, her eyes bright. Marcus reached for her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "Thank you," he whispered back. They parted naturally, both with a sense of growing excitement. Emily felt a flutter in her chest as she headed back to school. She imagined what Saturday would bring. Marcus walked toward his office downtown, thinking of how generous Emily had been and how much he wanted to know her better. That evening, Marcus wrote in his notebook. He wrote about hope and kindness, wrote about a woman who gave her last, dollar without hesitation. He wrote how every time he thought of her, he felt a spark of joy. He read the words over and over, then closed his notebook and stared out the window at the stars. Emily finished her lesson plans after dinner, then sat by her window with a cup of tea. She thought about Marcus's soft smile and the way his eyes lit up. She placed the note he had given her on her bedside table. She whispered goodnight to the stars, hoping for Saturday to come quickly. On Saturday morning, both felt the same excitement. Emily dressed in her favorite blue sweater. Marcus put on a light jacket and polished his shoes. They arrived almost at the same time outside the record store. They saw each other and laughed, relief and joy in their eyes. They stepped inside, together, side by side, and began their shared adventure. Small coincidence after small coincidence had brought them here. Each moment had led to this one. Two people, curious and kind, meeting again to learn more about each other. The world felt full of promise when they walked in together, hearts open to the chance that a simple act of kindness could lead to something lasting. They stepped into the record store together, bells jingling softly above the door. Wooden shelves lined the walls, each filled with vinyl records and colorful sleeves. A warm glow from hanging lamps made the space feel cozy. Emily ran her fingers along the edge of a stack, reading the titles in neat cursive. Marcus watched her with a gentle smile, happy to share this little world with her. They moved down the aisle marked Jazz, and Emily pulled out a classic album by Miles Davis. She turned it over, admired the cover art, then looked at Marcus. "This one is wonderful," she said. Marcus nodded. "One of my favorites, too. Let's play it." He carried it to the listening station in the corner, where a vintage turntable rested on a small table. He carefully placed the record on the spindle, set the needle, and the soft, smoky trumpet notes filled the air. They sat on two stools beside the turntable. Emily closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. She could almost picture a crowded club in the 1950s, people swaying under dim lights. Marcus watched her face light up with every note. After the song ended, she turned to him. "Thank you for this," she whispered. Marcus smiled shyly. "I wanted you to experience it here, where the sound is perfect." They spent the next hour exploring the store. Marcus guided Emily through the blues section, where she discovered B.B. King and Robert Johnson. Emily shared how her grandmother had once played old blues records when she was a child. "I used to dance in our living room," she said, laughing at the memory. Marcus joined her laughter, delighted by the image of little Emily spinning around with wild joy. At the back of the store, there was a small section for local artists. Emily leaned in to read the names, impressed. "I never knew our town had so much talent," she said softly. Marcus pointed to a record by a singer named Sarah Goodwin. "She performed at the community center last month. Her voice is amazing in person." Emily's eyes widened. "I wish I had known. I would have gone." Marcus grinned. Maybe. Next time we can catch her live." Emily nodded eagerly. "Yes, I'd love that." Yes. They moved on to country music, where Marcus surprised Emily by showing her an old Johnny Cash album. She raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know you liked country," he shrugged. "I've always enjoyed the storytelling in the songs." Emily picked up another album and held it between them. "Why don't we share one more?" they selected. A folk record by Joan Baez, and took it back to the listening station. This time, Emily gently placed the needle on the record. The sweet, clear voice filled the room, and Marcus closed his eyes, letting the melody wrap around him. He felt a calm settle in his chest. When the song ended, he looked at Emily with gratitude. "I'm glad we did this." Emily smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Me too. It's nice to slow down and really listen." They swapped another quiet moment, letting the hushed atmosphere create a peaceful bubble around them. Then Emily glanced at her. "Watch. Oh, it's getting late." Marcus stood and offered his arm. "Shall we keep our walk through the park?" Outside, the sun shone through fresh green leaves. The path curved alongside a small pond where ducks drifted lazily. Emily inhaled the crisp air. "It's so beautiful," she said. Marcus nodded. "I come here to think sometimes." They walked side by side, matching their steps. Small flowers dotted the grass-white daisies. Purple violets and Emily bent to pick a few. She tucked them behind her ear. They found a bench overlooking the water and sat down. A family of geese waddled by, and Emily pointed them out to Marcus. He laughed quietly, amused by their careful march. "They look like a little parade." Emily giggled. They watched until the geese slipped into the water, then turned back to each other. Marcus took a deep breath. "I'm really glad I met you," he said. His voice was soft but sure. Emily looked into his eyes and felt her heart flutter. "I'm glad too," she replied. Sometimes, one small choice can change so much. Marcus reached for her hand, and they held it, warm fingers entwined. They sat quietly, enjoying the peaceful sounds of the park. Emily thought of how lonely she had felt before meeting Marcus. Now everything seemed brighter. Marcus thought of how he used to rush through life without noticing simple joys. Now he felt present and at ease. After a while, Emily stood and stretched. "We should head back," she said reluctantly. Marcus rose too and offered his arm. Again, they walked slowly toward the exit, savoring each moment. At the park gate, they paused. Emily turned to Marcus. "Thank you for today," she said, voice gentle and sincere. Marcus smiled and brushed a hand across her cheek. "Thank you for being you." They shared a soft kiss under the shade of an old oak tree. It was gentle and full of promise. Emily felt warmth spread through her chest, and Marcus felt his world tilt in the best possible way. When they finally parted to go home, they agreed to meet the next day for coffee at the deli. Emily waved as Marcus walked down the path, her heart light. Marcus looked back and grinned, amazed by how quickly his life had changed. That night, Emily lay in bed, the pressed flowers from the park tucked into her planner. She thought of the music, the laughter, and the kiss beneath the oak tree. She drifted to sleep with a smile. Marcus sat at his desk, pen in hand, journaling about the day. He wrote about Emily's easy laugh and how the record store had felt like a dream. He closed his journal and placed a gentle hand over his heart. He whispered goodnight to the memory of Emily's smile and turned off the lamp. In their separate homes, both fell asleep thinking of each other. The simple act of buying lunch had sparked a connection neither expected. Now, in part 3 of their story, they had discovered new worlds together: music, nature, kindness, on the promise of many shared days ahead. ChatGPT said. Emily woke with a sense of excitement she hadn't felt in years. Sunlight filtered through her curtains, painting gentle patterns on her bedroom wall. She dressed quickly in a soft sweater and jeans, then grabbed the little vase. On her dresser, she placed the small wildflowers Marcus had given her last week into it. The colors seemed to glow in the morning light. She left her apartment and walked down the quiet street, humming a tune she had heard at the record store. Her steps were light as she approached the familiar bell over the deli door. It jingled softly when she entered. The counter greeted her with a knowing smile. "Morning, Emily," she said warmly. "He's here." Emily's heart fluttered. She turned and saw Marcus sitting at their window table, reading from a small, worn book. He looked up, his face brightening when he saw her. He closed the book and stood, his hand reaching out as she neared. They exchanged a quick hug. Emily slipped into the seat across from him. Marcus tapped the menu gently. "Coffee and your usual pastry?" he asked. She smiled. "Please." Marcus signaled to Carla. As he placed the order, Emily watched him. His face was open and kind, but she noticed a hint of nervousness in his eyes today. She wondered what he might say. When Carla brought their coffee and a chocolate croissant for Emily, Marcus set his book aside. He reached into his coat pocket and drew out a small envelope. "I found this last night," he said, sliding it across the table. Emily's brow furrowed with curiosity.
Nice.
She picked up the envelope and saw her name written in Marcus's neat handwriting. She carefully opened it and pulled out an old photograph and a receipt. The picture showed the deli counter, with Marcus standing in his suit and Emily beside him, holding out that crumpled dollar. The image was grainy, but clear enough to bring back the morning light of their first meeting. The receipt had 2 orders: Emily's coffee and pastry, and Marcus's roast beef sandwich and water. On the bottom, in the cashier's scrawl, someone had written "Paid by Emily." Emily's hand trembled as she traced the words. Her mind raced. "Where did you get this?" she asked softly. Marcus smiled softly. "Carla helped me find it in the back records." He leaned forward. "I wanted you to see it." Emily's cheeks warmed. She felt a rush of memory, the hush of the deli, the faint hum of the coffee machine, the quiet moment when she offered her last dollar. The memory came back in full color, the tight knot in her chest when she gave him that single bill, and the surprised gratitude in his eyes. She looked up at Marcus, her eyes shining. "I remember that moment," she said. "I felt so proud and so scared." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "That moment changed my day. No, it changed my life." Emily traced the photograph with her thumb. "I never thought it mattered so much." He squeezed her hand gently. "It mattered more than you know." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the truth settle around them. The coffee steam curled between them, warming the space. The chocolate croissant sat untouched on the plate, forgotten in the weight of the moment. Emily swallowed and met Marcus's gaze. "I want you to know why I did it," she said softly. "A few months ago I had my own card declined. I stood there, embarrassed and angry that I couldn't pay. I felt so small. When I saw you, I just knew you didn't deserve that feeling." Marcus listened, his eyes gentle. "I'm sorry you felt that way." She shook her head. "No, you don't need to be sorry. That feeling taught me to pay it forward. It brought me to you." He gave a small laugh. "I'm glad it did." Emily took a breath and let it out slowly. "I want to honor that moment. It feels like our real beginning." Marcus nodded. He stood and stepped around the table. He knelt down on one knee in front of Emily. Her heart lurched in her chest. People in the deli paused to watch, but the world felt silent around them. He opened a small velvet box and lifted out a simple, ringing, unadorned band that glinted in the morning light. He said, voice steady, "From the moment you gave me that last dollar, I have felt a deep gratitude and a deep joy. You gave me more than a sandwich. You gave me hope. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Emily's eyes. Her breath caught as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. She held out her hand and Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger. When he stood, she threw her arms around him. Carla clapped softly from behind the counter, and other customers offered congratulations. Marcus and Emily laughed through tears, holding each other tightly. Later, they sat back at the table, ring shining on Emily's hand. Carla brought them 2 cups of tea on the house. Emily raised her cup in a toast. "2 small acts," she said, "and 2 big beginnings." Marcus lifted his cup to meet hers. "To you," he said, "and to us." They sipped the tea, savoring the warmth. Millie looked at the ring and then at Marcus's face, the man who had become her best friend, her partner, and now her fiancé. She felt her heart swell with love. When they finally left the deli, they walked hand in hand into the bright morning. The world seemed new, full of promise and kindness. Emily carried the photograph and receipt gently in her bag, a reminder of the moment that started it all. As they turned the corner, Emily rested her head on Marcus's shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. They walked together, ready for the rest of their lives, knowing that a single, selfless choice had led them here. And they smiled, eager for the next chapter of their story. Emily woke early on the day of their small celebration, her heart fluttering with excitement. Sunlight streamed through her bedroom window, casting warm patterns on the walls. She dressed carefully in a light blue dress that fell just below her knees. She brushed her hair until it shone, then slipped on a simple necklace Marcus had given her last week. She carried with her the photograph and the receipt that marked their beginning, tucking them safely into her bag. Marcus stood at the entrance of the little garden behind the deli, his best shirt pressed and a small bouquet of daisies in his hand. The garden was quiet at first light, dew still fresh on the grass, He arranged a simple table with 2 chairs and a tiny cake from the bakery next door. He laid the photograph and the receipt on the table beneath a small glass dome. He wanted Emily to see the full circle of their journey. When Emily arrived, she gasped softly. The sight of the daisies, the cake, and the items under glass made her eyes shine with tears. Yes. Marcus took her hand and led her to the table. She touched the glass dome, tracing the edges of the photograph. He smiled, his own eyes bright. "I wanted us to remember where we began," he said gently. They sat and shared the cake, its sweetness warmed by the morning breeze. Each bite was light and fluffy, and they laughed when a bit fell onto Emily's dress. Marcus brushed it away with care. They talked about the weeks ahead, planning a small gathering of friends and family to celebrate their engagement, and thinking of where they might live together. Their voices were soft, full of hope. Later, they walked through the garden path, petals falling around them where flowers bloomed. Emily paused by a fountain in the center. She touched the smooth edge of the basin and whispered, "I never imagined that one small choice could lead to so much." Marcus wrapped his arm around her waist. "Kindness has a way of growing," he said. "It spreads from one person to another." They found a spot under a blossoming tree and sat on a low stone bench. Marcus took a small notebook from his coat pocket and opened it to a fresh page. He handed Emily a pen. "Will you write our first promise here?" he asked. Emily smiled and wrote, "We promise to always see the good in each other and to remind one another that small acts of kindness can change lives." They sealed the page with a gentle kiss. As the sun climbed higher, their friends began to arrive. Carla, the deli clerk who had witnessed their first meeting, came with a plate of savory pastries. A few of Emily's fellow teachers brought homemade lemonade and sandwiches. Marcus's co-worker from the tech office contributed fruit salads. Each brought a small gift, a potted plant, a book of poetry, a framed sketch of the deli counter. Emily and Marcus thanked everyone with hugs. They shared stories of how they first noticed the couple. Carla recalled the day Emily stepped forward to pay for Marcus's lunch. "I knew something special was happening," she said, eyes misting. Emily laughed and squeezed Carla's hand. Marcus's coworker told how the office buzzed when he returned wearing an extra bright smile. Everyone agreed that simple kindness had woven them together. After the small lunch, Emily and Marcus stood in front of the glass dome. Marcus cleared his throat and spoke softly. "Today, we celebrate not just our engagement, but the power of giving without expecting anything in return," he gestured. To Emily, she took a deep breath, and we celebrate how love can start in the gentlest way. They lifted the dome, held the photograph, and gently placed it in a keepsake box alongside the receipt. As the gathering wound down, birds sang in the trees, and the late morning breeze carried laughter across the garden. Emily and Marcus walked hand in hand, guests waving from the table. They paused at the deli entrance, and Emily turned to look one last time at the place where they first met. She felt grateful for that morning when pride had not stopped her from helping a stranger. Marcus drew her close. "Shall we go?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her. Emily nodded against his shoulder. They stepped through the door and into a bright future together. That evening, in the quiet of his apartment, Marcus spread their cards and notes across the desk. He placed the promise they wrote in the notebook beside the engagement ring's box, now empty. He touched the page gently and whispered, "Thank you for being you." Then he turned off the lamp and fell asleep with a contented smile. Meanwhile, Emily sat by her window, the box of keepsakes on her lap. She opened it and held the photo and receipt to her heart. She thought of the day she had a single dollar, yet found more than she ever expected. She drifted to sleep knowing that life could surprise you in the smallest ways. The days that followed, they moved into a cozy apartment near the deli. They planted the potted plant on their windowsill, so each morning they would remember growth and kindness. They invited their students and colleagues to visit, always offering coffee and pastries to share. Each time someone left in need, they remembered to give, just as Emily once did. On the first anniversary of their meeting, they returned to the deli. Marcus bought coffee for both of them, and Emily held out her last dollar. It was no longer her last, but she smiled as the cashier rang up 2 cups. They laughed together, remembering how far they had come. Then they stepped outside into the sunshine, hand in hand, ready to share another year of love, kindness, and simple acts that hold the power to change lives forever.